Hello friend, I'm so glad you've made it here tonight. Before we begin, maybe take a moment just for yourself. Let your shoulders relax. Let your breath slow now. If you'd like, tell me where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Maybe it's late. Maybe you're already tucked in. Or maybe the day's been long, and you're just looking for something quiet, something gentle to carry you into rest. If this is your kind of space, a place where history whispers, you're always welcome to come back. And if you feel like it, you can subscribe, only if it feels right. Tonight, we're going far back. Back to a world of sun-baked stone and slow-moving waters. To a place where the air shimmered with heat, where red boats glided down the Nile, and priests whispered spells under the stars. Yes, tonight we're going to ancient Egypt. But this isn't a story of mighty pharaohs and golden tombs. No, this is about the lives that never made it into the scrolls. The barefoot laborers, the tired farmers, the girl carrying water. Under the scorching sun, the boy who wakes before dawn to grind barley for bread. Because for most people, life in ancient Egypt was not easy. And truth be told, you probably wouldn't last a day. So now, close your eyes if you like. Let the quiet of the desert settle around you, and let's begin our journey into the forgotten hours of a world long gone, where the sand remembers everything, and sleep comes softly, like the breeze through papyrus reeds, along the banks of the Nile. It's early in the morning, and the desert sky is just beginning to soften with the first pale light. Outside, the Nile glimmers faintly, still cool with night. But you are already awake. You are not a noble, or a merchant, or a priest. You are a scribe, one of the many quiet figures who record the endless details of the kingdom. Line by careful line. Your name is in Tef. But for today, we'll just say you. You, in this small mud brick room with its cracked earthen floor and low wooden shelf. You live near the temple compound, where your work begins and ends in silence. There's no ceremony, no leisurely start to the day. The moment you light your oil lamp, you reach for your reed pen, sharpened to a fine point. In one shallow dish sits thick black ink, made from soot and resin. In another, red ink, reserved for headings and corrections. Your hands are already stained with last night's work. You didn't finish copying the list of grain shipments, and today there's more to record. Deliveries of linen, names of workers, counts of fish, taxes collected from a village upriver. You kneel on a worn mat, legs folded under you, shoulders hunched forward. You cannot lie down, or lean back, or pause too long. The scrolls must be filled before the overseer returns. One smudge, and your work is questioned. 2, and you are reprimanded. 3, and someone else will be brought in to replace you. You are not writing stories or poetry. You are not free to express thoughts or ideas. You copy what is given to you. Sometimes it is the same phrase, over and over. Other times, lists so long they fill 5, 6, even 10 sheets of papyrus. The repetition is dull, but your mind cannot wander. If it does, your pen slips. If it slips, you start over. You do not speak while you write. The others in the room, 2 older scribes and 1 quiet boy, are also bent low, scratching quietly in the dust-filled air. There is no breeze today, and the air inside feels heavy. The lamp smokes slightly. A fly buzzes somewhere near your ear. Occasionally, you hear distant sounds, a donkey braying, a seller shouting in the streets, the faint splash of a boat pole in the water. but you are not allowed to look. The Nile might be outside your window, but for all you know, it could be 1,000 miles away. The scroll in front of you is your only world. You wonder, sometimes, if anyone will ever read what you've written. If these records will matter. You are not a priest or a king. You are a witness to grain, to taxes, to who arrived and who failed to report for work. And yet somehow, this too is power. Quiet, dusty power, still. If it's so important, why does it hurt your back so much? Why does your neck ache from being bowed for so long? And why does no one ever say thank you? The sun is higher now. You can feel its heat beginning to press against the mud-brick walls of your little scribe's chamber. The air inside is still thick and unmoving, as if the very building is holding its breath. Your fingers are beginning to stiffen. The ink dries faster now, and every few minutes you must moisten your stylus to keep the black flowing smoothly. You've moved from grain tallies to personnel. Records a thick scroll of names, many of them familiar. Farmers, water carriers, bakers, guards. You've written these names hundreds of times before. You know who lost their ration last month. You know which family owes 3 jars of beer to the temple. You know who showed up late again and who hasn't been seen in days. You know more about these people on paper than you know about yourself, but you're not supposed to feel anything about them. You pause for a moment, your reed pen hovering over the scroll. There's a small blot of ink near the edge, not enough to warrant a punishment, but enough to make you frown. You reach for a dry cloth to dab it gently, then move on. There's always more to copy, more columns to align, more numbers to confirm. Outside, the street is beginning to fill with voices. You hear women pounding dough near the ovens, children shouting as they carry water jugs, traders arriving with donkey carts creaking under sacks of onions or amphorae of oil. You are not among them. You're still here, your shoulders beginning to sag, your eyes squinting against the fine lines you must keep perfectly straight. The room smells of papyrus and dust, and a faint hint of sour ink. Your stomach grumbles, but you don't eat yet. The midday rest won't come until your section of scrolls is finished. You glance across the room at the older scribe beside you, his fingers curled tight with age, yet still holding the pen. With care, he's done this every day for decades. He never speaks. You're not sure he even remembers how. You wonder if that will be you one day, quiet, bent, and ink-stained from decades of copying the lives of others. Perhaps no one will remember your face, but they'll remember your handwriting. Maybe your scrolls will be read in some temple hall long after you're gone. Maybe they'll crumble into dust, unread and useless. You write on. The boy in the corner coughs. He's barely 12, but he already knows how to grind ink and trim reed pens. He watches you sometimes, tracing invisible letters in the air. You remember being that boy once, back when holding a pen felt exciting, back when writing meant power. You wonder when exactly that changed. The page in front of you is almost full. You draw the final red line at the bottom. The section is done. You stretch your hand, fingers aching and sore. But there's no time to rest. Another scroll waits, already unrolled. You dip your pen again. The ink is thicker now. But what if the next mistake is one too many? What if today, even careful hands won't be enough? By late afternoon, the chamber is heavy with heat and silence. The sun presses through the narrow window like a solid beam, falling across the scrolls stacked beside you. Your back is stiff, your hands stained dark with ink, and your thoughts feel slow and muddled. but the work goes on. It always goes on. You've copied the shipment logs, the work assignments, the temple expenses, the records of cattle and flax. You've written names, dates, numbers, thousands of them, all organized in the precise, unchanging columns required by the priests and overseers. There's no room for creativity here. Every word has its place. Every pen stroke must be measured. You pause only once, just briefly, to stretch your legs in the courtyard behind the archive. The stone under your feet is warm. A small cat winds around your ankles. You don't say anything. No one does. It is not a place for conversation. Just a few steps under the open sky before returning to your stool, to your scrolls, to the ink. That never quite washes away. Back at your desk, the light begins to shift. Long shadows crawl across the walls. You light the lamp again, watching the oil catch with a soft flick. The flame flickers, casting wobbly shapes on the walls. Not gods, not omens, just smudged reflections of a long day. A very long day. You finish the last entry slowly, the way a man closes a door he knows he'll open again tomorrow. You smooth the papyrus carefully, place a small weight on the corner to hold it flat, and blow gently to dry the last line. Then, you gather your tools, the reed pens, the ink bowls, the burnishing stone. You clean them in silence. Your hands are trembling slightly, not from fear, just from hours of stillness. There's no ceremony when you leave. No thanks, no praise. Just a nod from the overseer and the soft creak of the door behind you. Outside, the air has cooled, and the Nile glows orange in the fading light. A few fishermen paddle by, their boats low and quiet. Somewhere upriver, a flute plays soft, distant, and barely audible. You walk slowly, your feet sore on the uneven path. People pass you, a merchant arguing over grain, a young girl carrying a basket of laundry, an old man with a cane. None of them notice your ink-stained hands. None of them ask what you've written, or for whom. And maybe that's the point. You are not meant to be seen. You are meant to record, to witness, to preserve the machinery of this vast empire. One word, one name, one number at a time. You wonder, when your scrolls are stored in the temple vaults, when the mice have chewed the corners, when the ink has faded, will anyone remember the man who wrote them? Or will they only remember the numbers? You wake before sunrise, as you do every day. The sky is still grey, the air cool, but your arms already ache, not from today's work, but from yesterday's. Your name is not written in any record. No one will remember your face or your back that bends from dawn to dusk. You are simply known as the woman who grinds the wheat. You live near the edge of a farming village, not far from the irrigation channels that feed the barley fields. Your home is made of sun-dried mud bricks, one room shared with your children and goats. There is no privacy, no wealth, and certainly no luxury. But there is grain, and that means work. The grain was harvested moons ago, stored in pits. Now, every day, it must be ground by hand into flour for bread, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt. You don't question the task. It's as normal as breathing. You learned it from your mother, who learned it from hers. The grinding slab is made of basalt, worn smooth from generations of use. It sits low to the ground. You kneel in front of it, legs tucked under, and pick up the upper stone, a heavy oval handstone that fits awkwardly in your palm. You pour a handful of emmer wheat onto the slab and begin to press and rub. Back and forth, until the hard grains crack and grind into coarse flour. Dust rises with every motion, fine, gritty, grey-brown powder that floats into your hair, your eyes, your throat. You cough sometimes, but there's nothing to be done. It's always there, in your nose when you sleep, in your sweat when you wake. The children who play near you are already learning to live with it. Your palms are thick with calluses, your knuckles are rough. Over time, the grit from the flour works into your skin and between your teeth. It even wears down the enamel of your molars, leaving them jagged and brittle. But there's no other way. You must finish grinding enough for the bread baking before noon. That means thousands of strokes, one after another, in the same slow rhythm you've always known. You hum while you work, a low tune, half lullaby, half prayer. No one listens. No one needs to. Outside, the day is warming. A donkey brays in the distance. You hear the creak of a water-lifting shadoof somewhere near the canal. But inside, in your corner of the grinding room, it is just you, the stone, and the dust. You think, sometimes, about what it would be like to not have to do this, to wake late, to sit with both hands free. But then you shake the thought away. In this life, there is no such choice. Everyone grinds. If not you, then someone else. You pause to stretch your shoulders. Your arms are already sore, but the pile beside you is still tall. You pick up another handful and begin again. Back and forth, back and forth. But what happens if your arms one day give out? What if no one is left to grind? The sun is climbing. Now, harsh light cuts through the doorway, casting long, hot rectangles across the floor. You've already been at the grindstone for hours. The pile of wheat has slowly shrunk, and the pile of flour, soft and warm like dry sand, has grown. In a shallow basket lined with linen, but there's still so much to do. You're not grinding just for yourself. Today is your turn to prepare the flour for 5 households. Some women grind alone, others in pairs. You work with your sister-in-law, a woman of few words, who arrives after sunrise and takes the second grindstone. Together, the two of you fall into a steady rhythm, stone against stone, arms moving in slow repetition, backs curved, sweat forming in small patches across your linen dress. There is no shade inside, only stillness. The breeze doesn't reach this room. It never does. From time to time, someone passes through. A boy carrying dates for the baker. A girl sent to fetch the ash bucket for the oven. A neighbor checking if the midwife has returned. But no one stays. There's nothing interesting about watching wheat turn into flour. And yet, this is where the bread begins. Once enough flour is ground, it will be mixed with water and a lump of leftover dough from yesterday's loaf. It will be kneaded by hand, left to rise in the heat, then shaped into small, round discs and baked on hot stones or inside clay ovens. If the dough is too dry, the bread will crack. If the flour is too coarse, the loaves will be hard to chew. Everything depends on your grinding. You wipe the sweat from your forehead with your forearm, careful not to let it drip into the flour. The dust still clings to your skin, and your throat itches. You haven't had water since sunrise. There isn't enough to drink freely, not during the hot season. You glance outside for a moment. The canal is shimmering in the heat. You can almost imagine diving into it, letting the water wash the flour, dust from your skin, from your hair, from your lungs. But it's just a thought, like the dream of being born into a house, where someone else grinds for you. You shift your knees on the mat and pick up another scoop of grain. The sun creeps higher, and your shadow shortens. You can tell the time by how fast the light climbs the wall. Behind you, the babies start to cry. The goats kick at their posts. The clay oven outside begins to smoke as someone lights it with dried reeds. You're nearly done with the last batch. The flour basket is full now. You reach in and run your hand through it, soft, warm, and just slightly gritty. You press your cracked thumb into the surface and watch the impressions slowly rise back. But is it enough? Will the families complain if the flour isn't fine enough? And what if next time your arms aren't strong enough to finish? By mid-afternoon, the flour is delivered. You carry the heavy linen bundle on your shoulder, tied tightly with a palm fiber rope. It's warm from the sun, still smelling faintly of wheat, sweat, and stone. The baker meets you at the courtyard. Kill, a squat, clay oven surrounded by soot, flies, and broken pots. She nods silently, opens the sack, and runs her hand through the flour. She doesn't say much, but you can tell it's good enough, just fine enough, just dry enough. That's all anyone asks. This flour will feed 10, maybe 12 people today. Each person will get a small, round loaf, flat, dense, a little sour from the fermented starter. Bread is the backbone of life here. Without it, no field hand could till the earth, no mason could lift a chisel, no servant could rise to sweep the steps. Even the nobles, the ones who never touch a grindstone, eat the same bread, just baked in cleaner ovens. You sit on the edge of the low wall, wiping your arms with a cloth. Your hands throb. Your knuckles are scraped raw, tiny cuts filled with flour, dust, and sweat. There's nothing glorious about your work. It will not be carved into a tomb wall or mentioned in the temple records. There's no song about the woman who grinds. But the bread will be eaten, and tomorrow you will do it again. You glance around the village. Chickens wander between huts. Children chase one another with red toys. The men are out in the fields or carrying baskets for the granary. You're not special here. No one is. Everyone labors. Everyone serves the land, or the gods, or the harvest. Your job just happens to begin with a stone and end with a loaf. You return home with a few crumbs tucked in a cloth for your children. They eat quietly, used to the scratchy texture, the dryness, the occasional sharp edge of a bit of stone that slipped through the flour. It's not perfect. It never is. But it keeps them alive. Later, as dusk falls, you rinse your hands in a basin. The water runs cloudy. You brush the flour from your hair, from your eyelashes, from the creases in your palms. It clings, always. No matter how many times you wash, you can still feel it, the weight of the day's work. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you ask yourself the same question you always do. Is this what it means to be needed? To give everything and still be invisible? You lie down on a woven mat near the fire pit, muscles sore, throat dry. The moon rises slowly over the rooftops, and from somewhere nearby, a grinding stone starts again. Another woman, another shift, another day, and so the bread continues. And so does the dust. Before the sun rises, you are already knee-deep in mud. You are a brickmaker, not a builder, not a mason, just one of the many who shaped the sun-dried blocks that hold Egypt together. Temples, walls, granaries, homes, even the palaces of nobles. None of them stand without your work. And yet, no one knows your name. Your day begins at the edge of a muddy pit near the riverbank, where the Nile has left behind thick, black soil during the flood season. It's sticky and heavy, and it clings to your legs as you wade through it barefoot. Your hands are blistered, your back bent before the first hour passes. There is no breeze yet, and the air hangs heavy with the smell of wet earth and sweat. You don't work alone. Dozens of others are already mixing straw into the mud. Women, children, old men. The straw keeps the bricks from cracking as they dry. Some workers stomp the mixture with their feet. Others knead it with short wooden paddles. You use both. Your body is the only tool that's never lost or stolen. The work is rhythmic. Scoop, stir, stomp. The overseer walks past occasionally, checking the consistency of the mixture. Too wet and the bricks will crumble. Too dry and they won't shape properly. You know this by feel now. You've been doing it since you were strong enough to lift a basket. Once the mud is ready, you fill a wooden mold, a simple box without a top or bottom. You press the mixture in with your hands, smooth the surface, and slide the mold away, leaving behind a perfect, damp rectangle. It takes seconds. Then you repeat the process again and again. By midday, you'll have shaped over 200 bricks, maybe more. You place them in long, neat rows to dry beneath the burning sky. They must sit for days, baking in the heat, flipped every few hours to prevent warping. If it rains, which is rare, all the work will be lost. But mostly, it doesn't rain. Mostly, the sun does the work, slowly hardening each brick into something solid, something useful, something permanent. You, on the other hand, feel far from permanent. The sun rises higher, and the mud under your feet grows hot. You've long since lost any sense of comfort. Your legs are scratched from the straw, your arms sore from carrying molds, your fingers caked with drying clay. There is no shade here, no shelter, only the glint of the Nile in the distance and the shimmer of heat rising from the drying fields. Still, you do not stop. The fields must be filled. The order is large, a temple wall this time, or perhaps a royal granary. You don't know. You were never told. You just keep shaping the earth. And you wonder if everything in this land is built from your hands. Why is it that no one remembers the ones who made the bricks? The sun is directly overhead now. The shadows disappear. The drying fields become a wide, flat oven, and you are standing in the middle of it. Your feet burn with every step on the packed earth. You shift your weight constantly, hopping from one foot to the other when no one's looking. But there's no escaping it. The heat climbs up your legs, into your spine, into your head. It dulls your hearing, blurs your eyes. And still, you work. The mud pit is drying quickly now. Every few hours, someone fetches water from the canal to keep it usable. You shovel what you can, knead in the straw, and continue shaping bricks, one after another. The mold presses against your hands like a memory. The same shape, the same size, over and over again. You don't have to think about it anymore. Your body just moves. Some of the other workers begin to sing under their breath. It isn't a song of joy, but of rhythm, just enough to keep the steps aligned. One young boy recites the days of the flood calendar as he stomps mud. An older woman mutters a prayer to the river gods between breaths. You don't speak. Your energy is saved for lifting, pressing, wiping sweat from your eyes. You wonder how long your body will keep doing this. The bricks you've already formed are drying quickly. Every few hours, you walk through the rows to flip them, one by one. Some are already cracked. The straw wasn't mixed evenly, or perhaps the mud came from a patch of soil that was too coarse. It's impossible to tell. The overseer will be angry, of course. But then again, he always is. Sometimes during these walks, you look at the rows of bricks and think of them as people, each one shaped by hand, left in the sun, hardened by heat, then taken away to be stacked into something greater, a palace, maybe a wall, a temple courtyard where others will stand, never knowing what lies beneath their feet. You pass another worker, a man older than you, his back permanently bent, his hands missing 2 fingers. He doesn't look up. He hasn't in years. He still makes his bricks, even slower now. No one thanks him, but he shows up every day. Like you, by late afternoon, the smell of clay fills your nose, thick and sour. Your arms move slower, and you have to pause more often. But still, there are bricks to be made. The molds don't fill themselves. The pit doesn't stir on its own. There is no record of how many bricks you make. No tablet bears your name. You are part of the process, necessary, invisible, and expected. Tomorrow, there will be more mud, more straw, more sun, more silence. But what happens when your hands can no longer lift the mold? What happens when your body becomes as cracked as the bricks you leave behind? Evening falls slowly, but the heat lingers in the ground long after the sun dips beyond the horizon. The bricks lie in neat rows, warm to the touch, edges firming as the night air cools the surface. You stand beside them, watching your breath rise slightly in the dusk, not from cold, but from exhaustion. The fields are quiet now. The laughter of children has faded. The other workers have begun to leave, their feet caked with mud, their eyes half closed from a day of sun and dust. You stay a little longer, wiping your tools with a strip of linen, rinsing your hands in a cracked basin of water. The grit doesn't leave your skin, not really. It's worked itself deep into your fingers, under the nails, in the creases of your knuckles. Even when your hands are empty, they still feel heavy, like they're gripping something. You look down at the finished bricks. There are so many, hundreds, maybe thousands, by now. You've lost count, long ago. Some will go to the priest's granary, others to the garden walls of a rich merchant. A few will be carted upriver to Thebes or even Memphis. You'll never know where they end up. Your part is here, shaping, drying, preparing sometimes. When you pass a temple wall in the city, you stop and place your hand on the stone beneath. The outer layer of painted plaster. You know what's really there. Mud, straw, the same sun-dried bricks you made last season, or maybe the one before. You press your palm against them and wonder, just for a moment, if one of these was yours. If your fingerprints lie hidden beneath the surface, forgotten beneath gold and paint and stone, you'll never know. No one carves your name into the bricks. Those are reserved for kings, priests, and generals. The workers stay silent. The builders go unnamed. But their work holds up the city. Without them, nothing stands. Without you, there would be no walls, no ovens, no homes, no halls for pharaohs to walk through, and still your name is not remembered. You gather your things, wrap them in cloth, and begin the walk home. Your feet hurt with every step. The clay has cracked your heels, and your skin is raw from the heat. The path is quiet, lined with fields that have already gone dark. A few lanterns glow in the distance. Someone is baking bread. Someone is sweeping dust from their doorstep. Life continues, as it always does. You pass the drying fields once more and glance back. The bricks lie there, silent, drying in rows, side by side, just like the people who made them. Tomorrow you will return, and the day after that, until one day Your hands can no longer shape the mud, and someone younger takes your place. And the walls, the ones you built but never owned, will still be standing. But who will remember that you were ever here? And somewhere out there, across this wide, turning world, maybe you're listening from a quiet wooden cabin nestled deep in the snow-dusted pines of Canada, where the wind outside hums softly against the window pane and your blanket feels just a little warmer with each passing breath. Or perhaps you're in Belgium, in a gently lit attic room under the slope of an old rooftop, where cobblestone streets whisper below and a cup of something warm rests beside your hand, half forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, you're listening from a peaceful porch in the USA, where the crickets sing softly in the warm night air, and the stars above blink slowly, like they too are ready to sleep. Wherever you are, thank you for being here, drifting through this quiet moment with me. If you'd like, you can share in the comments where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. I always find it so gentle, knowing we're all connected, even in silence. Now then, let's return to our story. The air is still, the past is near, and there's more to gently unfold. You wake before the palace does. The sky outside is still deep blue, stars barely fading. But already your feet are moving over cold tile floors, your hands scrubbing at clay pots, and your ears tuned to the faint clatter of kitchen servants arriving one by one. You are one of them, a palace kitchen servant in service to the pharaoh himself. But don't be mistaken. You will never see the pharaoh. The kitchen lies in the rear of the palace complex, far from the painted columns and quiet pools of the inner courtyards. You pass no gold. You wear no jewelry. Your linen tunic is plain, stained with grease and smoke from yesterday's stew. You've already begun preparing today's. The kitchen never fully rests. Someone is always kneading, boiling, rinsing, or sweeping. The fires must be kept alive. The clay ovens, large dome-shaped mouths of heat, are never cold. And there are rules. Strict portions, endless instructions, and no room for waste. You are assigned to vegetable chopping today, an exhausting, repetitive task. You kneel on a mat, a woven basket beside you, and begin slicing leeks and garlic into strips, fine enough for palace stews. Your blade is bronze, not very sharp, and your fingers ache from holding it at the same angle for so long. But you keep working. All around you, others do the same. One woman plucks pigeons for roasting. A man kneads flour into flat discs of bread for the priestly trays. Another stirs a pot of lentils, muttering quietly to herself. No one talks unless they must. Voices are kept low. Mistakes are noticed. The kitchen overseer, a broad man with a shaved head and dark eyes, passes by occasionally, checking the preparations. He taps your basket once, nods, and moves on. He won't remember your name, just your speed. The hardest part is the silence, not complete silence. There's always the bubbling of broth, the crackle of fire, the dull scrape of pestles grinding spices. But the human silence, the quiet submission to routine, is heavy. No one complains. No one sighs. It's not safe to. You chop garlic until your hands reek of it. Your eyes sting. Your knees cramp. You pause only to wipe your blade on a cloth. Then continue. The pharaoh's household eats 5 meals a day. Elaborate trays of meat, bread, onions, fruit, dates, nuts, honey cakes, and spiced wine. Most of it must be perfect. Most of it will never be tasted by those who prepare it. You once saw a servant make a mistake with the bread salt. He was sent away the next day. No one asked where. You keep your head low, you slice evenly, you stir when asked, you nod when spoken to. The sky brightens outside the kitchen door. Another day is fully begun, and still you've not eaten. But what happens if the stew burns today? What if the pharaoh's table goes empty, and no one cares who was to blame? The sun is high now, though you wouldn't know it. The kitchen has no windows, just small slits near the ceiling for the smoke to escape. The air inside is thick, always moving, heavy with the scent of boiling onions, singed oil, damp firewood, and roasted pigeon feathers. You're no longer chopping, you've been moved to the stew pot, a massive clay cauldron balanced on bricks. Over glowing embers, the fire must be fed slowly, or it will burn to hot and ruin the flavor. You squat beside it with a wooden paddle in your hand, stirring clockwise, the way you were taught. The mixture bubbles faintly, a slow and steady sound. It's meat today, goat, perhaps, or maybe fish, salted and spiced until it hardly matters what it was. The smell is rich. Hunger rises in your throat, but there's no tasting allowed, not even a finger to the spoon. The overseer watches too closely. Around you, the kitchen hums with quiet urgency. Bread is rising near the fire, flat, soft discs scored by hand. One servant blows gently into a cooling tray of dried dates. Another prepares honey cakes with a reed mold and a smear of crushed figs. The attention to detail is endless, even if the ingredients are simple. Someone drops a bowl. It shatters on the floor. The room freezes. The overseer turns slowly, eyes sharp. No one speaks. No one moves. The servant who dropped it picks up the pieces without a word, cuts her hand on the sharp edge, and keeps moving. Blood on the reed mat. No one helps her. The stew must not burn. You keep stirring, occasionally. A runner arrives from the front of the palace with orders. More bread for the scribe's table. A fresh bowl of lentils for the high priest's cousin. A tray of sliced cucumbers for the guards near the northern courtyard. You prepare food for people you will never meet. Their names mean nothing to you, but their meals are your duty. There is no glory in the kitchen. No murals will show what you do. The pharaoh will never know you boiled his lentils or kneaded his bread. But if anything goes wrong, the blame will fall hard and fast. Kitchens, after all, are expected to be invisible, smooth, unnoticed. You pause to rub your shoulder. The paddle is heavy now. The stew is thick, bubbling harder. You add a splash of water and keep moving it. Clockwise, always. Clockwise. The shadows shift slightly across the stone floor. You hear a muffled drumbeat in the far wing. The pharaoh is returning. From a ritual, the meal must be ready soon. The plates must be warmed. The trays must be polished with damp cloth. You glance down into the stew, golden and brown and bubbling like lava, and think, what happens if this boils over? If one meal goes wrong, how many lives are burned with it? The meal is finished. You watch as the trays are carried out one by one, each stacked with dishes you helped prepare. A lacquered platter holds roasted goose stuffed with herbs, bowls of barley porridge, sprinkled with crushed dates, fresh baked bread rounds lined up like little suns, and the stew, thick, aromatic, steaming, is ladled into painted pottery. With care, but none of it is for you. The trays vanish through the tall doors that separate the kitchen from the palace halls. Once they're gone, the kitchen falls quiet. Not restful, just empty. The steam still clings to the walls. A pot hisses on a dying fire. The cloth you use to wipe your hands is stiff with flour, and you are still hungry. The cleanup begins almost immediately. No one eats until every pot is scrubbed, every knife wiped, every bit of food ash scraped from the ovens. You wash the stew pot you spent all morning tending. Its rim is blackened from fire. Its bottom is crusted with bits that burned slightly near the end. You scrub until your fingers go numb, until the bronze edge shines again. Around you, others move like shadows, quiet, tired, and faceless. A boy carries a bucket of bones to the waste pile. A woman wipes down the breadboards with lemon rind and sand. Someone sweeps the floor with a palm broom made smooth by years of use. At last, you're given a small scrap of bread. Not from the pharaoh's tray, from the leftover batch. The crust is hard, the center dry, but you chew it slowly. Your jaws ache, your throat is parched. The bread sticks in your mouth, and you swallow without complaint. You think, not for the first time, about the wall paintings in the temples, the ones that show feasts, servants pouring wine, trays piled high with figs and fowl and honey. The servants are always smiling. They carry their burden with grace. There is no sweat, no burns, no ash under their nails. Those paintings are not for you. They are for the ones who sit at the table. But you are the reason the table is full. You. Rest on a stone bench for a moment, pressing your palms into your knees. Your linen tunic is stained with grease. Your hands smell of garlic and old firewood. You will return tomorrow before the sun and do it all again. Not because you must be remembered, but because it must be done. Someone has to cook the pharaoh's meal, even if no one remembers who stirred the pot. And as you leave through the back gate, the kitchen now dark and empty behind you, you ask yourself, if the pharaoh never sees your face, did you really exist in his world at all? The marshes are silent in the morning, not empty, never empty, but quiet in that way only water can be. Birds murmur in the papyrus stalks. The river flows with slow confidence. Insects hum above the surface, and your feet, submerged ankle in the warm mud, press into the ancient silt with each careful step. You are a reed cutter. No title, no inheritance. Just a man with a curved bronze knife and a woven basket strapped to his back, and a task that's been done by people like you for more generations than anyone can count. Reeds. That's your world. They grow tall here, papyrus. Mostly green, strong and straight, rising far above your head. Some stalks are used for mats, some for baskets, some for roofing. The best ones are trimmed carefully and taken a priver to be sliced thin and flattened into writing scrolls for temples and scribes. But that's not your concern. Your job is simple. Find the tallest, cleanest stalks, cut them low, just above the root bulb. Stack them carefully. Avoid the black mud holes. Avoid the snakes. Work until your basket is full, or until your hands bleed. You walk slowly through the reeds, parting them with one arm. The air smells of algae and old water. Your skin glistens with sweat, and the thin cotton wrap tied around your waist is already damp. The morning sun is rising behind you, turning the tops of the stalks golden. Beautiful, perhaps, but you don't stop to admire it. Your knife slices through the first stalk with a soft, fibrous crunch. Then another, then another. You grab them just below the feathery crown, shake off the insects, and stack them over your shoulder. They're heavier than they look, especially when wet. A heron watches you from a sandbar, one leg raised like a judge. You don't meet its gaze. You don't have time for omens. There are rules in the marshes. You must cut carefully, angled, not jagged. Broken stalks are useless. Bent reeds can't be woven. Some cutters ruin entire bundles by rushing. You won't make that mistake again. You shift deeper into the reeds, water rising up to your knees. Something moves under the surface. A fish, maybe, or a lizard, or something else. You don't pause. You've learned that most creatures here don't bother you, unless you startle them first. You keep moving. The marsh is 1,000 tiny sounds, buzzing, dripping, rustling, but inside your mind, it's quiet. Just the steady rhythm of your knife, the rustle of your steps, and the knowledge that if you stop, someone else will take your spot. No one watches you work. No one records your harvest. No priest thanks you when he writes on your papyrus number. Merchant remembers who wove his baskets. You are the source no one sees. But what happens if the reeds stop growing? What if the cutter slips and no one notices he's gone? The basket on your back is almost full now. Each reed you cut is heavier than the last, not in weight, but in wear. Your arms are stiff. Your knees ache from bending and wading. The sun is climbing higher, drawing beads of sweat down your neck. Still, you keep going. There's more to cut, more to carry. You pause briefly to adjust the basket's rope strap. It bites into your collarbone. A wet reed falls from the top and splashes into the shallow water. You pick it up, shake it off, and slide it back into the bundle. Nothing must be wasted. Not even one stalk. Somewhere to your left, another cutter hums under his breath. You don't know his name. You've worked beside him for years, maybe, but there's no need for words. In the marshes, silence is safer, cleaner. The reeds don't talk, so neither do you. The cutting is precise now. You look for the straightest stalks, ones without insect damage, without too many leaf scars. These will be stripped and pressed. 4 scrolls. You wonder, sometimes, what ends up written on them. Stories of the gods, maybe, or tax records, or the pharaohs' victories. Nothing about you. Your knife slips once, just once, and slices the edge of your thumb. A thin line of blood beads up, bright, against the bronze blade. You wrap it quickly in a strip of linen and keep working. There's no stopping. No one will cut for you. There's no one else waiting in line to take your place. This is your job, yours alone. The air grows thicker with each passing hour. Dragonflies buzz around your ears. A frog jumps from the bank, sending ripples through the water. You move deeper, where the reeds are denser, your legs brushing against submerged stalks. Mud sucks at your ankles. You learn to walk with care. One bad step, and you'll disappear. Up to your waist, your bundle is nearly ready. The top stalks poke over your shoulder, each one trimmed with care, aligned by length. It's not just about cutting, it's about preparing something that will be handled by people far above your station. They may never see your face, but they'll run their hands over your harvest. And still, no one remembers the cutters. As you begin the walk back to the bank, water squishing in your steps, the load on your back shifts. It leans slightly to one side. You balance it with your shoulder, knowing how far the walk is. It's not just to the edge of the marsh. It's all the way to the drying rack, to the weighing table, to the scribes who track harvests by volume, not by person. You move slowly now. The sun blazes against your back. You smell of mud, river, sweat, and sap. And still, you keep walking. But what happens when the reeds run dry? When the papyrus stops reaching for the sky, who will notice the silence in the marsh? You reach the edge of the marsh as the day begins to lean into afternoon. The sun is high but starting to tilt, casting long streaks of gold across the reed beds. You step onto firmer ground at last, your legs wobbly from hours in soft mud. The bundle on your back is heavy, but familiar now. Its weight presses into your spine like a memory dot. At the drying racks, you set it down carefully. One of the older men, bent from years of this same work, helps you arrange the reeds on the flat wooden slats. They must lie straight, side by side, with the leafy tops trimmed away. Some will dry and crack in the sun. Others will curl from uneven moisture. Those will be discarded. But most will hold. As the reeds dry, they change color from deep green to pale yellow. The papyrus ones especially. When stripped and soaked again, they'll be pressed into thin sheets for writing. You wonder, as always, whose hands they'll pass through. Perhaps a temple priest will ink them with hymns. Perhaps a tax scribe will scrawl names and debts. Perhaps a noble's son will learn to form his first letters on them. Your work will be touched but not known. You rinse your knife in the river. The water is warm, slow, carrying flecks of silt and bits of reeds downstream. The cut on your thumb stings, but it has stopped bleeding. You rub your hands together, watching the sap and sweat wash away in thin streaks. Around you, the other cutters are unloading. No one talks much. Just the occasional grunt, the creak of a basket strap, the sigh of someone too tired to complain. The marsh doesn't reward noise. It rewards patience, precision, endurance. Later, after everything is stacked and counted, a young overseer arrives to inspect the bundles. He scribbles something on a scrap of palm fiber, nods once, and walks away. He doesn't ask who gathered what. He doesn't need to. You eat a small midday meal of dry bread and leeks, seated on a rock by the water. The sun reflects off the river like fire. You chew slowly, eyes half closed. There is no shade, but you're used to that now. You think, as you often do, of how many years you've done this, of how many reeds you've cut, how many baskets you've carried, how many scrolls, mats, sandals, baskets, and boats you've helped create, with nothing but a knife, a basket, and your back. Tomorrow, you'll return again. The reeds will still be growing. The river will still be waiting. You'll step into the water, feel the mud between your toes, raise your knife, and begin again. And maybe, just maybe, one of the scrolls made from your reeds will survive the centuries. It won't have your name, but your hands. Your hands will be pressed into the fibers forever. The desert wind is already moving. When you arrive at the workshop, it slips between the low stone walls like a breath, dry and constant. You ignore it. You always do. It's the wind that dries your pots. It's the wind that stings your eyes. It's the wind that carries the dust that clings to everything. Your hands, your clothes, your lips. You are a potter. Your wheel is made of wood and sits low to the ground, balanced on a frame carved by your grandfather. It squeaks when you turn it, a soft, rhythmic sound you've grown to like. Your feet spin it from below, while your hands shape from above. You've done this for so many years, you can feel the weight of the clay with your eyes closed. The clay came from the riverbank 2 days ago, dug up in heavy lumps, packed in wet cloth, and hauled on the backs of donkeys to the edge of town. You kneaded it with your own feet until it was soft, folding it over itself again and again until it stopped resisting. Now it sits beside you in a cool basket, waiting to become something useful. You work with your hands, not your voice. Pottery yard is quiet. There are others here, 2 apprentices grinding pigments, a boy mending broken pots, an old woman preparing reed brushes, but no one talks. The only sounds are the hiss of sand against brick, the soft thump of the wheel, and the distant bray of a goat tied near the water jars. You press a fresh lump of clay onto the wheel and begin. The motion is slow, deliberate. Your fingers steady the center, your thumbs press downward. The clay rises like a small tower, then dips, then curves. Your fingers are coated in red dust. You work from the base up, shaping the vessel with slight movements, barely touching, yet always guiding. The wheel spins. The wind brushes your arms. Time disappears. You are not making art. You are making water jars, fat-bellied, narrow-necked, for the neighborhood well. Every family needs one. Not too large, not too thin. They must be strong enough to carry on the back without cracking. You've made thousands. You'll make thousands more. And yet, each one is slightly different. Sometimes, while shaping, you find yourself wondering where the jar will go. Will it be carried across the fields by a woman in the morning sun? Will it sit beside the bed of an old man too tired to rise? Or perhaps it will break before it ever holds water. You don't know. You never know. The vessel takes shape under your hands. You slice it free from the wheel with a thin string of palm fiber, then lift it gently and place it among the others in the shade. You cover it with a cloth to keep the wind from cracking it too early, and then another lump, another spin, another jar. Your hands are dry now. Your back aches. Dust clings to the corners of your eyes. But you ask yourself, as you shape the next jar, when the clay remembers your fingers, will anyone remember your name? The sun has climbed high now, spilling over the low walls of your workshop like molten light. The jars you shaped earlier are drying slowly in the shade, covered loosely with damp cloths to protect them from cracking too quickly. You pause beside them, gently pressing your thumb against one of the rims, firm but still soft enough to deform, not ready for the kill yet. But soon, you return to your wheel. Another vessel waits. The clay is warmer now, almost sticky. You dip your hands in water and begin again. Steady, slow, familiar. The wheel turns beneath your feet in a soft rhythm, chuck-chuck. You could do this in your sleep. You have almost. Some nights you dream of it, not the pots themselves, but the feel of the earth spinning, the center pulling upward, the weight of silence all around. Pottery isn't glorious work. You don't carve temples or paint tombs, but your hands hold the memory of the Nile itself. The silt from its floodwaters, the sand from its banks, the fire from the desert wind. Every pot is a message, unspoken, useful, and ignored. Once the clay is shaped, the next danger begins. The firing pit lies behind the workshop, a wide, shallow trench lined with blackened stones and driftwood. You and another potter have spent the morning building it up, stacking dry reeds, broken potsherds, and donkey dung into a careful mound. The jars go in first, layered in with old ash. The fire will be fed slow and long, smothered to keep the heat steady. Too fast, and everything will explode. You place your freshly shaped vessels near the pit, watching their surface shift in the dry heat. They almost breathe, expanding and contracting with the temperature. You whisper a small prayer, not to a god really, but to the clay itself, that it holds, that it survives, that your work doesn't crack and collapse in the night, because if it does, you'll have to start again, and there's never enough clay to waste. In the distance, you hear the cry of a trader's donkey. Somewhere nearby, a pot breaks, not one of yours, but still, the sound makes your stomach turn. That dull shatter, all that time, gone in a heartbeat. You turn back to your wheel. It waits. The fire will be lit at sunset. All night, you'll tend it, feeding it slowly, shielding it from the wind, checking for smoke, watching, waiting, hoping the heat is just enough, not too much, not too little. And as you press your fingers back into the next lump of clay, you wonder if 1,000 pots pass through your hands, but none ever carries your name. Did you build something, or did the dust win? The sky is dark now, not black, just deep blue, with stars peeking through the heat haze, still rising from the earth. You sit beside the firing pit, a cloth wrapped loosely around your shoulders, and your eyes fixed on the low flame beneath the kill's dome of ash and stone. The fire breathes. It glows softly from within, pulsing like a heart. You can feel its heat from where you sit, not the burning kind, but a heavy warmth, slow and deep. You feed it one small branch at a time. Too much wood, and the heat will spike. Too little, and the fire will collapse. It's not just burning, it's guiding, tending, listening. You whisper to it sometimes, not out loud, not with words, but in your head, where only the night hears. You ask the fire to be kind, to hold the pots without breaking them, to do what it's always done. It is a silent partner, invisible and fickle. Sometimes it rewards, sometimes it destroys. The other potters are asleep now, curled under red mats, not far from the kill. You volunteered to take the night shift. You always do. You like the quiet. The fire gives you space to think. About the jars. Yes, but also about the people who will carry them. You imagine a woman drawing water from the well at dawn, the strap of one of your jars over her shoulder. You imagine a baker using your pot to store grain, or a priest pouring libations from one of your carefully glazed pitchers. They won't know who made it. They won't ask. But your hands shaped the thing they touch, and for a moment, that's enough. Near midnight, the fire reaches its peak. The air around the kill wavers. The sand glows faintly, and the pots inside, unseen, begin to harden into permanence. They've survived the shaping, the drying, the loading, and now the burning. Some will still crack. 1 or 2 may burst, but most will live. You lean back and close your eyes for a while. The stars above you seem to blur into the fire below. By morning, the kill will be cool. You'll reach in, one by one, and pull out what the night has made. Some pieces will be perfect, clean rims, strong bodies, smooth curves. Others will have small flaws. A dent, a thin wall, a bubble in the clay. You'll set them aside, not with anger, but with quiet acceptance. Not everything survives the fire, but you did. You stand, stretch, and check the coals once more. The fire is low now, satisfied. Almost you whisper a quiet thank you, then sit again, arms crossed, back curved, and you wonder, as the wind picks up in the distance, when your wheel stops turning, when the fire no longer needs your hands, will anyone remember the sound of a single pot cooling in the dark? The canal water is cold this morning, not freezing, not like the northern lands you've heard about in passing stories, but cold enough to numb your fingers as you kneel at the bank, ankle deep in the silt and water, cloth already soaking. The sun hasn't cleared the horizon yet, but your work has begun. You are a laundry washer, not in the palace, Not for the priests, just for the everyday. Market vendors, temple guards, scribes, and the families who live along the edge of town. You carry their sweat and their dust in baskets on your back, and give them back their linen, clean, fresh, and folded. They don't see the water. They only see the result. Your feet squish softly in the riverbed mud. You've worked this same spot for years. The banks slope gently here. The current is steady but mild. There's a flat patch of sun-baked clay where you can beat the garments with a smooth stone. Today's load is already heavy. A pile of tunics, headcloths, sashes, and linen wraps. Some stained with sweat, some with oil, a few with something darker. A soldier's cloak smells of blood and ash. A child's tunic carries the faint scent of sour milk. You don't ask questions, you scrub. You dip the cloth in the canal water, lift it and twist, over and over again. Your hands ache after the first hour, they always do, but you keep going. You rub the garments with a paste of natron and crushed chalk, a mixture handed down from your mother and hers. Before that, you scrub with fingers and a river stone, wringing each piece again and again until the water runs clear. Then you spread the linen across the warm rocks behind you to dry in the sun, pinning corners with bits of clay to keep them from fluttering into the canal. A few other women work beside you, quiet, methodical, each at their own stretch of bank. No one speaks much. The rhythm of work has its own conversation. Splash, rub, twist, beat, rinse, and repeat. One woman hums softly as she works. You don't know the tune, but you find yourself matching your motions to it anyway. The air smells of wet stone, river grass, and soap as the sun rises higher. The banks begin to grow busy. A fisherman casts a net nearby. A boy washes clay from his hands. A goat bleats from behind a house. But you keep working, kneeling, scrubbing, lifting, rinsing. Sometimes, your eyes drift to the ripples in the water, wondering where the canal ends and where the river becomes sea. But you never leave your patch. Not even in daydreams. Your fingers are wrinkled now, your knees stiff, but there are more garments to wash, more stains to beat away, and you wonder, as you twist another tunic and hear it drip into the basin, if the linen carries the scent of the Nile. Do your hands carry anything at all? The sun is higher now, glinting off the water's surface, turning the canal into a ribbon of gold and glare. Your back is warm, your forehead damp, but your hands remain in the water, steady, slow, practiced. The linen tunics, spread out on the drying rocks, flutter gently in the breeze. They ripple like sails on a still boat, anchored in place by bits of clay or river stones. You check each piece carefully. Some stains remain stubborn streaks of oil or a drop of ink from a careless scribe. You know which ones won't come out, even before you scrub, but you still try. Some people treat you like a ghost, someone who takes their dirty things and returns them clean without ever speaking. Others talk too much, telling you their family's illnesses or a complaint about a neighbor. Their clothes carry their words too. You can always tell which tunic belongs to someone proud and which belongs to someone broken. You scrub a child's sash, small hands stitched with faded thread. There's a tear at the edge where it must have caught on a branch. You wonder if the mother noticed. You wonder if she'll blame the child. You smooth it gently with your hands and set it to dry. Your fingers sting from the natron. The skin around your nails is raw. You dip your hands into the cool canal water and pause, just for a moment, letting the cold dull the ache across from you. A younger washerwoman lets out a short laugh. She's just dropped a tunic in the canal and is scrambling to catch it before the current takes it. It's rare to laugh during work. You smile a little, not because it's funny, but because it breaks the rhythm just for a moment, and then back to the rhythm again. You rinse a temple guard's sash, stiff with dried sweat and the scent of barley beer. You beat it clean against the stone, counting softly as you do. Once, twice, 6 times. The rhythm helps. It keeps your mind from drifting. Behind you, on a clay ridge, the older women begin folding the garments that have dried. The creases must be neat, the folds exact. When people receive their linen, they expect it to smell clean, to feel crisp, to carry no sign of the one who scrubbed it. You understand that you've never signed your name to anything. You never learned how. You stand, slowly, your knees tight, and stretch your arms. A flock of birds passes overhead, their wings flashing like blades in the sun. You return to the basket. There are still more garments left, and you ask yourself again, if everything you touch leaves your hands looking older, does any of it remember? The sun begins to drift lower now, stretching your shadow across the canal bank. The rocks are warm to the touch. Most of the linen has dried, pale and stiff from the natron, folded now into clean bundles. You brush off the last specks of dust and begin placing the garments back into your basket, each one carefully aligned. As if the order itself means something. It does, in its way. You know which bundles belong to which homes, by weight, by scent, by memory. The scribe's tunic has a faint trace of ink in the cuff. The brewer's sash is thicker, coarse from years of use. The temple girl's head-drap is thin, almost sheer, embroidered by hand. These aren't just clothes, they are lives, wrinkled, washed, folded, returned, and you remain. You stand slowly, basket balanced on your hip. The skin on your fingers is cracked. There's dried natron beneath your nails. Your back throbs with the kind of ache that won't disappear overnight. Still, you walk. Past the goat, tied to the fig tree, past the reed mat where your sandals wait, past the line of wet stones you've knelt on for years. The water behind you settles into silence again. Later, you'll deliver the bundles, quietly, without knocking. You'll leave them in doorways, or hang them on low pegs. Sometimes a child will peek out and offer you a dried fig, or a bowl of warm lentils. You never ask, but you always thank them, even if it's only with your eyes. You'll go home after that. Not far, just a single room tucked behind a storage shed. You'll wash your own hands last. You'll hang your own tunic to dry. You'll sit beside your own water jar and feel, briefly, like you too are clean. And maybe, just maybe, the next day you'll find a new tunic in someone's pile. One you haven't scrubbed before. A new name, a new story, a new stain that no one will explain. That's the way of things. The Nile flows. The people sweat, the linen stains, and you wash it all away. And as you sit on the threshold of your home, the sun now red and low behind, the reeds, you think, when every piece of cloth returns whiter than before. Why do your hands only grow darker? The air inside the tomb is cool and still. You've entered just after sunrise, when the desert wind outside is still stirring the sand, but down here, deep inside the painted corridor, there is only silence. You walk carefully, sandals soft against the stone floor, careful not to stir dust. Your hand tightens around the bundle of rush brushes bound together. With twine. You are the youngest apprentice in the painter's crew. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't paint the faces of gods or the wings of sacred birds. Not yet. You grind pigments, carry water jars, stretch linen, and trace simple outlines under the master's steady eye. You wait and you watch, hoping someday to leave your mark on something that will last today. You're here before the others. The tomb is halfway finished, the outer hallway done, the funerary scenes in progress, the burial chamber still blank. Your job this morning is to prepare the wall for the next scene. That means scraping, wiping, checking the last layer of plaster for cracks or rough patches. It's not glamorous work, but you run your palm gently along the surface anyway, imagining where the wing of Mat will go, where the god Thoth might kneel, quill in hand. You don't know the entire design, only fragments. The master holds the scroll, the plan drawn in red ink. But you've seen enough to want more. You lay out your tools, a reed mat, 3 brushes, a small jar of black pigment, and the damp cloth for smoothing. You begin at the corner of the wall, rubbing gently in small circles, removing dust left behind by the last layer of plaster. You work slowly. The tomb is quiet. Even the torchlight barely flickers. On the far wall, you see the completed figures, painted by the master's hand. Tall gods with falcon heads, sun discs, serpents, and stars. Their eyes seem to follow you as you work. You know better than to meet their gaze for too long. There is respect to be shown, even in paint. Later, the master arrives. He inspects your cleaned wall without a word. Then he hands you a brush. Not for pigment, not yet. Just for charcoal. You hesitate, heart thudding. He nods. You kneel and begin to trace the first lines of a palm frond. A simple border. Nothing sacred. But still, it's your first mark. The brush bristles scratch faintly against the plaster. You follow the pattern from memory, copying what you've seen 100 times. Your hand trembles, just slightly, but the lines remain straight. The master watches, arms crossed, saying nothing. When you finish, he takes the brush from your hand and places it back in the bundle. Then he walks away. You stare at the mark you've made, dark against the pale wall, a quiet line that will someday be buried beneath layers of color, gold, dust, and centuries. And you wonder if no one ever knows which hand made that first stroke. Does the wall still remember? By midday, the tomb smells of pigment and oil. The heat outside creeps into the stone, making the walls warm to the touch. The torches are dimmer now, sputtering slightly in their brackets. The master has returned, along with the senior painters, and the silence of morning has turned into a hushed rhythm of quiet instructions and patient craft. You sit on a low stool, mixing pigments, not in golden bowls, not yet, but in small clay dishes, each one labeled in charcoal. Red ochre from the desert hills, yellow from iron-rich stones, green from malachite, blue from crushed lapis, when it's available, black from soot, white from powdered chalk. Your job is to grind them with water and gum arabic, just enough to make them spreadable, but not thin. It's slower than painting, but this is how it begins. You stir the mixture with a reed stick, checking its consistency. Then you test it on a fragment of plaster, watching how it dries. The green is too streaky. You add a drop, more binder, stir again. It's better now. Behind you, the master hums softly while painting the feathers of a falcon god he works with. A brush no thicker than a reed's tip, layering color upon color with infinite care. The older apprentices sit to the side, copying hieroglyphs from papyrus onto the wall. They don't look at you, but you watch them whenever you can. Your hands are stained with pigment now, red under your nails, blue across your knuckles. You wipe them clean with a damp cloth and continue mixing. You measure without thinking. The proportions live in your hands, not your head. Your back aches from sitting. Your legs tingle from stillness. But the wall is taking shape. The god Horus now has form. Behind him, a procession of priests is outlined in dark red, their robes left blank for later. You recognize one of the figures from yesterday's scroll. You know how his foot should step forward, how the line of the shoulder must angle. You haven't drawn one yourself, not fully, but you've studied them enough to see mistakes before they happen. One of the older boys smudges a glyph. The master stops, sighs, and gently corrects it with a cloth and brush. No shouting, just precision. Perfection, you're told, is not about beauty. It's about balance, symmetry, order. The gods don't care if it's pretty. They care that it is right. You carry another bowl of mixed red to the painter working on the funerary. Offering seen. He nods once as you kneel beside him and watch. He paints a loaf of bread with a single stroke, then a fish, then a folded linen bundle. He says nothing, but you notice his brush is older than yours, worn thin from use. The tip bends slightly, yet the lines are perfect, and you wonder, quietly, when your brush finally wears down, will your hand be steady enough to finish what you began? The sun has long since slipped behind the hills, but inside the tomb, time means little. The torches flicker lower now, casting soft shadows across the painted walls. You sit cross-legged near the back chamber, your body heavy with the dais. Stillness, your fingers numb from grinding, carrying, mixing. The floor is cool beneath you. You breathe in the scent of plaster, pigment, and sweat. The painting is nearly done. Today's scene, a procession of gods, leading the soul of the tomb's owner through the gates of the afterlife, stretches across the far wall in deep reds, rich greens, and faded blues. Each figure carefully outlined, each hieroglyph in place. A priest holds incense in one hand, a lotus in the other. Behind him, the jackal-headed god Anubis stands tall and calm. The master has stepped outside, perhaps to rest, perhaps to pray, perhaps to be alone. You remain, no one asked you to, but something in you wants to stay, just a little longer. You run your fingers along the edge of the wall. The paint is dry in places, tacky in others. The brushwork here isn't yours, not yet, but still, you saw it happen. You watched it grow from dust to figure, from sketch to god. You handed the brush, you mixed the color, you swept the floors before the plaster was poured. There are no names on the wall for you. Only the name of the tomb owner will be carved here, carefully inked and preserved for eternity. And if the gods accept his offerings, if the tomb remains undisturbed, he will live again in story, in spirit, in memory. But your name, and the name of the master, and the names of all the hands that lifted the brush and chiseled the stone, those will fade. That's always been the way you stand, slowly brushing dust from your knees. One last task remains, a small detail, a borderline around the final corner. Not a sacred symbol, not a face or a name, just a thin black line. The master left it for you. You dip the fine brush into the jar, steady your hand, and kneel. The line curves gently beneath your fingers. You hold your breath. One stroke, 2. A soft sigh. The line is done. You set the brush down, and for a moment, you just sit there, knees against the stone, staring at your line. It's straight, it's clean. It will last, and maybe, long after your bones are dust, when a stranger lights a torch in this tomb centuries from now and sees that border, they'll never know your name, but they'll see the line, and that will be enough. By now, the night has deepened, and everything feels slower, softer, maybe outside your window. There's a hush of mist curling through the trees, wrapping the world in quiet silver. Or maybe it's the faint shimmer of moonlight spilling across the floor like a memory dot. Or perhaps it's just the low hum of a ceiling fan, steady and gentle. The soft ticking of a clock in another room. Or the last hollow drip of tea in a cooling cup. Somewhere, someone has fallen asleep with a book open on their chest, and a single lamp glows warm against the dark. A lighthouse in the sea of sleep. Stories like these move quietly, not to startle, but to settle. I find myself wondering, is there a memory in you that tastes like this moment? Of course, there's no need to answer. But if anything quietly surfaced for you, the comment box will still be there, like a warm place at the edge of sleep. No pressure, just presence. Now then, let's go back, deeper into the quiet heart of history. Why you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt, where heat rose from the stones, and life, even in silence, never stood still. The hut is small, just enough space for a mat, a stool, and the bundles of reeds that lean quietly in the corner. The roof above you is woven from dried palm fronds. It rustles gently in the morning breeze, casting moving shadows on the clay floor. Outside, the village is already awake. Chickens pecking, children shouting, a donkey braying down by the canal. But inside your hut, it is always still. You are a basket weaver. You do not leave the village walls much anymore. You are not strong enough to carry bricks or fast enough to fetch water. But your fingers still move, and your eyes still see the pattern in the fibers. That is enough. The reeds were soaked overnight. Now they lie in a soft, damp pile beside you. Long, slender, flexible, each one trimmed and sorted by length. You select a handful and sit cross-legged on the mat, your knees already stiff. You begin with the base. Always the base dot you cross. The first two reeds at the center, pressing them between your thumbs. Then you wrap a third around them, then a fourth. The spiral begins. This work is not fast. You must listen to the reeds, feel how they bend, where they resist, when they split. If you pull too hard, they snap. If you pull too soft, the basket loses shape. You find the rhythm, over under, turn, over under, press. Your fingers move, slowly, but they remember. Beside you, the wall is marked with notches, small scratches in the clay, one for each week, a second row for each season. You don't remember when you began counting, perhaps when your eldest child left for the city, perhaps when your joints first began to ache, perhaps simply because the baskets all looked the same after a while. You never count the baskets, just the days. A child peeks in through the doorway, not yours, but familiar. She watches silently as you weave, wide-eyed. You nod at her, then hold up a finished basket so she can see. She smiles and vanishes again. You do not speak much now, not because you cannot, but because no one asks. They know you weave. They leave bundles of reeds at your door. They collect finished baskets from the shelf. Sometimes they leave figs or dates in return. Sometimes they don't, but always, the weaving continues. The basket begins to take shape. In your lap, the base firm, the sides rising gently, the rim just starting to form. You work until your fingers grow sore. Then you rest. Not for long. The reeds cannot wait too long, or they'll dry out and crack. And as you press the next coil into place, adjusting it with the edge of your thumbnail, you glance at the wall once more. Another notch, maybe tomorrow, and you wonder when all your baskets are scattered across kitchens, fields, and temples. Will anyone remember the hands that never stopped weaving? The sun has risen higher now, slipping through the gaps in your palm-thatched roof. It paints thin lines of light across your lap, warming the reed coils as they rise into the curve of a basket. The shadows shift softly as time moves, but inside your hut, the pace remains the same. The basket grows, not quickly, not with urgency, but with the quiet insistence of habit. Over under, turn, tighten, press. Your hands know the path even when your thoughts drift elsewhere. You think of the first basket you ever made, long ago, when your mother placed your hands on the reeds and said, "Bend with them, not against them." It was misshapen, crooked, too soft, but she smiled anyway and used it for onions. You remember how proud you felt. You were 6. That was before your hair turned grey, before your hands ached in the cold, before you measured seasons by the way the wind moved through the reeds, not by the stars in the sky. Outside, the village continues its life. A cart creaks past. A woman calls out to her children. Somewhere, someone laughs. You don't rise to look. You stay with the weaving dot. Your latest basket is nearly done. You run, your fingers along its edge, checking for loose threads. There are always a few. You tuck them in gently, sealing the rim. Then you reach for a small piece of cord and tie it around one of the coils, a signature of sorts. Not a name, but a mark. Something quiet, something yours. You set it on the finished pile and stretch your back, joints clicking softly. There are 10 baskets now, some large for grain or flour, some small for figs or salt. None are perfect. That doesn't matter. They're useful. They'll last. You wipe your hands on a cloth and drink from the water jar in the corner. The clay is warm, the water cool. You let it sit on your tongue for a moment before swallowing. The jug is old, a chipped handle, faded paint, but it still holds. Like you return to the mat and gather a new bundle of reeds. This time for a cradle basket. Someone is expecting a child. You don't know who, but someone left a note. Carefully written, tucked into a folded scrap of linen for the child. By mid-month, no name, just that. So you begin again. The base wider, the sides rounder, the walls taller, soft, yet strong. The reeds creak slightly as you bend them into place. You pause often now. Your fingers are slower, but each time you stop, you press your palm against the basket's side, feeling its shape, listening. You don't speak to the basket, not with words, but it listens anyway. And you wonder if a child sleeps one day in something you made. Will they dream of your hands, even if they never know your face? The sun is lowering now, softening the light inside your hut. The shadows from the palm roof stretch longer, crossing the floor like silent fingers. The village has quieted too. Chickens return to their coops. The sound of grinding stones fades from the courtyards. A warm breeze pushes gently at your woven doorway, as if reminding you that the day is nearly done. but the weaving is not. You tie the final coil of the cradle basket with a thin reed, looping it 3 times the way your mother taught you. You rub your thumb along the rim, pressing it flat. The basket sways slightly in your lap, not from weakness, but from breath. It feels alive in a way that clay never does. You hold it a moment longer before setting it beside the others. Then you sit back, resting your palms on your knees, listening. The hut is silent. There was a time when this room held laughter, when children ran in and out, tracking dirt and dropping reeds. When your partner sat across from you, weaving their own shapes, whistling low under their breath. That was many seasons ago. The notches on the wall say so. You glance at those notches now, hundreds of them, carved slowly over years each, one marking a week. Some months you forgot, others you remembered every single day. They aren't straight. Some are worn thin by fingers. One row stops suddenly and never resumes. Still, you never erase them. You reach for a small reed and press it into a damp cloth, softening its tip. With a steady hand, you make one more mark just beneath the last row, not as deep, not as sharp, but there, and that's enough. Outside your door, you hear footsteps, light ones. A young voice calls your name, asking politely if the cradle basket is ready. You smile and answer yes. The child enters slowly, barefoot, and carries it away. With 2 hands, they say thank you and bow their head before leaving. You sit in the empty room again. 10 finished baskets remain, lined along the far wall. One by one, they'll vanish. Some will hold bread, others will carry figs. One may be buried with someone you'll never meet, and one will rock a newborn to sleep. Your work is quiet, often unseen, easily forgotten, but never meaningless. You run your fingers along the mat, brushing away loose scraps. Then you lay down, arms folded, eyes tracing the roof's familiar pattern. And you wonder, as dusk settles into every corner of your little hut, if no one remembers your voice, will your hands be enough to tell the story? The flood has not yet come, but you can feel it waiting. You wake before the light, long before the birds begin to stir in the tamarisk trees. The air is heavy with stillness, the kind that clings to your skin and smells faintly of silt and wet. Leaves. You roll up your reed mat, splash your face with water from the jar, and step outside. The floodplain stretches before you, low, wide, and quiet. You've walked this land since your legs were strong enough to stand in mud. You know where the ground dips, where the frogs sleep, where the reeds grow tallest. This is not farmland. Not exactly. It is in-between land, wild, seasonal, temporary, and it is yours. You carry only a curved blade, wrapped in cloth, and a coarse linen rope. No need for anything more. You won't be gone long. The light is just beginning to creep across the eastern edge of the plain, revealing the first swirls of morning mist rising above the marsh. The reeds are thick this year. You reach the edge of the stand, tall papyrus, waving gently in the still air. Some are twice your height, with feathery tops that shimmer gold when the sun hits them just right. You crouch, press your hand to the earth, damp but not yet soaked. The flood is close, but today the ground holds. You begin your work. It is not a loud task, but it is not silent either. The blade slices through stalk after stalk with a soft, wet hiss. You gather the reeds in bunches, tie them with rope, and lay them in rows behind you. Each one must be long, straight, clean. You select carefully, like a scribe selecting his brush hairs. These reeds will become many things. Some will be woven into mats or sandals. Some will be stripped and dried for pence. Others may be burned for fuel, or bound into fences, or even used to patch a roof against the rains. The papyrus you carry might someday hold the words of a priest, or the record of a harvest, or the name of a king, but for now, they are only plants in your hand. Ordinary, damp, sharp. A mosquito lands on your wrist. You brush it away. Somewhere a heron cries. You shift your weight, already feeling the strain in your lower back. This work is not difficult, but it is endless. No matter how much you cut, more grows back. That is the way of the floodplain. By midday, your arms are slick with sweat. Your knees are stained dark with water and crushed stems. You sit briefly on a stone, chewing a piece of dry bread and watching the distant river. And you wonder, when the flood returns and washes all your paths away, will the reeds remember where you walked? The sun has climbed high, baking the tops of the reeds and pulling thin wisps of mist from the marsh. You move more slowly now. Your shoulders ache, and the muscles behind your knees twitch from crouching. Too long, but the bundles behind you are growing, stacked in orderly rows, bound tightly with linen cord. Each one carries the memory of your blade and the weight of your hands. You pause to stretch, standing upright, the reeds towering around you like a green-walled maze. Insects buzz at your ears. A dragonfly lands briefly on your arm, then flickers. Away, you listen to the shifting of water underfoot, the faint sound of frogs plopping into shaded puddles. These sounds do not distract you, they comfort you. You've lived your whole life in their company. The river is not visible from where you stand now, but you feel it, a low hum beneath the soil, a promise of what's to come. The flood season is always the same. The waters rise, the canals overflow, the plain disappears beneath shining brown sheets of water. For weeks, it will be gone. And then, when the waters pull back, they leave behind the silt and the reeds and the promise of another cycle. But the waiting time is always quiet. You lift another stalk, testing its strength. It bends. Not too soft, not too dry. You cut it cleanly and tie it to the others. You glance toward the west, where storm clouds sometimes rise this time of year. Nothing. Yet, you might have another few days. Maybe less. You kneel again and keep cutting at the edge of the stand. You find a patch where the reeds grow unevenly, some short, some too thin, others already browning. You pass over them. Not every reed is useful. Not every blade deserves to be cut. The flood will claim them soon enough. From your satchel, you pull a small gourd of water and drink slowly. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, then rest the gourd on a rock. Your fingers twitched with fatigue, but still you reach for the next bundle. This is what your father did. And his father. You don't remember when you first followed him into the reeds, but you remember his hand steadying yours on the sickle, the way he taught you to twist the stalk before slicing, to let the plant feel the motion before the cut. It was never about force. It was about knowing the right time. You finish one more bundle, then two. The pile grows, even as your energy fades. And you think, as you wipe your hands on your tunic and gaze across the reeds one more time. If the flood erases your footprints and the river forgets your name, will the mats in someone's home carry the ghost of your labor? The wind has changed. Not much, just enough that the reeds sway in a different rhythm. Just enough that you know the river is stirring. Somewhere upstream, the water is rising, pushing out of its banks. winding down from the highlands where snow once melted and rain never stops. The flood is coming. You feel it in your bones more. Then you see it the way elders feel the turn of seasons without looking at the sky. You glance at your bundles, stacked neatly along a raised patch of ground. If the waters come by morning, they'll be safe. If not, you'll move them higher. You gather the last of the cut reeds, wipe your blade clean with a scrap of cloth, and rest it across your shoulder. The blade is old, passed down through more than one hand, worn smooth along the handle. It doesn't shine, it doesn't need to. Your back hurts, your feet are soaked, your legs itch with reed cuts. But the work is done for now. You walk slowly back toward the village, stepping over shallow pools, ducking under low branches, weaving your way through familiar trails. Your footprints leave soft dents in the mud, but you already know by this time next week, the water will be here, and the path will vanish. Some years, the flood is kind. It lays a blanket of silt across the fields, brings fish into the shallow ponds, leaves behind reeds thick and green by the end of the season. Other years, it takes too much. A roof, a child, a field that never grows the same again. You accept both at the edge of the village. A neighbor nods at you. She sees the bundles and smiles. You don't speak, you don't need to. She'll take some for mats, trade a bowl of lentils for a roll of clean-cut stalks. She knows the value. Everyone here does. You store the rest behind your home, under the awning, where the rain won't reach. You stack them by size. Large ones at the back, finer stalks near the front. You run your hand across the pile. The scent of crushed green clings to your fingers. That night, you lie on your mat, listening. Not to voices, not to animals, but to the strange hush that comes before the flood. It's not silent, not really, but everything waits. The frogs grow quiet. The reeds stiffen. In the breeze, even the birds seem to perch lower. You close your eyes. The blade is wrapped and resting by the door. Your hands are scratched, your arms tired, but there is no urgency now, only stillness. You've done what the season asked of you, and you think, as sleep presses gently across your chest, when the flood returns and washes the fields clean, will anyone remember who cleared the land before it came? The clay is heavier today. You carry the lump in both hands, pressing it gently into the worn surface of your turning table. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the courtyard is already warm, the heat still clinging to the kill stones from the fire lit the night before. Your bare feet leave prints in the fine dust, soft and temporary. You are the potter. You've worked with clay for longer than you've kept count. You don't need measuring lines, notches, or marks. You know the weight by feel, the moisture by scent. The good clay comes from the river bend near the tamarisk grove, smooth, fine, reddish grey. You kneaded it the day before, your palms pressing out the grit, folding it in on itself like dough. Now it rests beneath your fingers, cool and waiting. You turn the wheels slowly, shaping the base first, the sound of your fingers dragging through. The wet surface is soft, like a whispered tune only the clay can hear. The lip of the pot begins to rise. You keep the sides even. A bulge here means a crack later. A narrow base tips to easily. You've learned these things not through teaching, but by watching and failing, and trying again in the kiln nearby. Last night's pots are cooling. You haven't opened the mouth of the fire chamber yet, not even peeked. That's the rule. You must wait, let the heat fade, let the air settle. You've lost more pots to impatience than to poor shaping. A cracked bowl sings, a lesson sharper than a teacher's voice. So you keep your hands busy while you wait. The village is quiet still. A rooster crows in the distance. A water jar clinks somewhere beyond the fence. You press your thumb into the side of the pot, forming a small grip, practical, familiar. These jars are for oil, the kind the temple buys in bundles. You won't sign them, you never do. But you'll know which ones were yours when you pass them in the market. You'll see the shape of the neck, the curve of the lip, and you'll smile silently to yourself. Another pot joins the row. Your son once asked you why you didn't carve your name into your work. You told him, the pot isn't mine after it cools. It belongs to the kitchen, the traveler, the merchant, the mourner. You're only its first shape. The sky brightens now, streaked with faint pink. You wipe your hands on a cloth and glance toward the kiln. You want to look, you want to lift the lid just slightly, see the colors, check for cracks, but you've learned better. Clay teaches patience, not just form, so you wait, and you wonder when. The fire fades and no one is watching. Does the kiln still remember the shape of your hands? The sun climbs slowly into the morning sky. The courtyard is filled now with long, slanted light. The pots you shaped earlier sit in neat rows beside. The wall, their surfaces still damp, their forms quietly settling into the air. You cover them with a linen cloth to protect them from dust. Then stretch your back and wipe your hands clean. It's time. You step carefully toward the kiln, a round, stone-bellied thing, blackened with years of heat. It's built low to the ground, its base dug slightly into the earth. You crouch beside it and lay a hand against the outer rim. Still warm, but no longer burning. The fire has done its work. You reach for a clay shard and use it to gently lift the edge of the kiln's lid. A faint gust of warm air brushes your face. Inside, silence. The smell is sharp char, smoke, a trace of scorched earth, but also something sweet and dry, like baked bread. You lift the lid fully and lean in, eyes adjusting to the dim glow. The pots sit in stillness, each one changed. The transformation is always quiet. You pull the first jar gently from the coals. It's darker than before, a deep orange near the base, fading to pale tan near the neck. The clay is harder now, no longer soft to the touch, but smooth and ringing. You tap it lightly with your fingernail. It sings. You exhale. Not relief, not joy, just quiet satisfaction. One by one, you remove the pieces. Most are sound. A few show hairline cracks. One has split completely down the side. The glaze burned too fast. You set it aside without emotion. Some always fall to the fire. That is its way. You inspect the survivors carefully, turning them in your hands, feeling for flaws, listening for the hollow echo of a clean burn. You know each one by weight. You remember where they sat inside the kiln. The fire burns unevenly. You arrange your work accordingly. This one is too thin. It'll break within a season. This one is just right. It will last for years. You set the finest aside. A water jar with a smooth belly and balanced lip. It might go to the temple or to the chief's kitchen. You'll never know for sure. But you'll see it again, perhaps, when someone walks past with it on their shoulder, and you'll nod slightly, saying nothing. The fire always takes something, and it always leaves something behind. You sweep the ashes into a low pile and brush soot from the edges of the kiln. The air is already warming. Flies circle lazily. Somewhere nearby, a boy calls out your name. asking when the next batch will be ready. You don't answer yet. You just sit there, knees pulled close, hands dark with smoke, staring into the empty kiln that moments ago held light and flame. And you wonder if the pot outlives the potter. Will it still carry the silence of your waiting? The fire is gone. The ash swept. The courtyard is quiet again. You sit on the low stone step just outside your home. A jug of cool water beside you. The finished pots arranged in rows behind your shoulder. The sun is overhead now, and the world has grown loud footsteps, carts, birds, shouting, but none of it seems to reach your little square of dust and shade. You're thinking about the cracked jar, the one that didn't survive the kill. You turn it in your hands now, tracing the long fracture down its side. The break is clean, not violent, a slow, invisible split that must have begun in the shaping or the drying or the moment you lifted it too soon. You don't mourn it, not really, but you study it, because every failure teaches. You set it aside. Gently, maybe you'll grind it down for grog. Maybe you'll bury it beneath the next fire. Maybe it will stay there, beside the kiln, until time smooths its edges and someone else finds it 1,000 years from now. Wondering who made it and why it cracked. That thought makes you smile, just a little. A child passes, carrying a jar. Not yours, but one like it. The shape is familiar. You nod. The clay moves through the village without your name on it. But you know your hands are there, in the handles, the rims, the small thumbprint beneath the base where you always press. A little too hard, your hands ache today. Not from shaping, but from stillness. You rise slowly and return to your wheel. There is still good clay in the basin, covered with wet linen to keep it soft. You knead it gently, pressing your palms into it, folding it like breath, shaping it into a quiet, sleeping mound. You do not begin a new pot yet. You simply feel the weight of it. This is the part no one sees. The waiting, the silence, the pause between what was finished and what will begin. The fire may be the loudest moment, but the story begins long before, in the soft hands, the quiet breath, the turning of the wheel before the first shape rises. And tomorrow you'll begin again. The wheel will turn, the clay will yield, and the fire will wait. And you wonder, as you cover the basin with a cloth and step back into the light, if the pots forget your hands, will the earth still remember your patience? You rise when the world is still dark. The sky above is black and velvet soft, scattered with stars that tremble faintly above the desert. Your village lies in silence, not even the dogs stir. You sit for a moment on the edge of your mat, rubbing your eyes, wrapping your shawl tight against the lingering night breeze. Then you stand, stretch your back, and reach for the jars. 2 of them, tall clay, balanced, each one smoothed at the base from years of wear. The rims are chipped slightly, but they hold. You hoist one to each shoulder, not full, not yet. Just their empty weight. Even that is enough to pull gently at your spine as you walk. The path to the canal is not long, but it winds. You step carefully around the huts, past sleeping goats, past the basket maker's door, past the courtyard, where the temple boys will chant at sunrise. Your feet know the stones. Your steps know the silence. You walk alone, but not lonely. This is how each day begins. You are the water carrier. No one gave you the title. It came on its own after years of lifting, walking, pouring, returning. You are not the only one who fetches water, but you are the first, always the first. The village wakes to the sound of your footsteps long before it hears the voices of men. The canal appears like a dark line across the sand. Its banks are low now, not the season of flood, but the water still runs, slow and silver, catching the light of the stars. You kneel, resting the jars in the silt. You roll your sleeves and dip a jug slowly into the current, careful not to stir the mud. Then the second the weight returns, you lift them to your shoulders with practiced effort. You never rush the walk back. The trick is balance. The jars sway slightly as you walk, pressing down into your muscles, reminding you to step gently, to breathe evenly, to stay upright. You've spilled before, long ago. The lesson was simple. Slow water lasts longer. You reach the village. Just as the horizon begins to glow, someone opens a shutter. A rooster calls. You set the jars in the square, one for the baker, one for the midwife, and sit on the wall for a moment to rest. Already, others are waking. You will make another trip. And another. The day hasn't even begun, and you wonder, when no one remembers who carried the water, will they still taste the silence in every sip? The village is stirring now. Children chase chickens through the alleys. A woman sweeps her doorway with a palm broom. Smoke rises from early cooking fires, thin and blue. The day has begun, as it always does, with movement, voices, and the quiet rhythm of repetition. But you've already been walking for hours. Your jars are lighter now. One sits empty beside the oven hut, its water already boiled for barley. The other rests in the temple courtyard, its neck wrapped in cloth to keep the water cool. No one said thank you. No one needed to. You wipe your forehead and begin again. Your path back to the canal is drier now, the dust looser beneath your feet. You walk slightly off the main trail this time, avoiding the path the herders use. Your ankles are sore, but your gait remains even. The water must not slosh. You pass the reed cutter's boy on your way out. He waves, but does not speak. He carries firewood on his back, and you both understand. Mourning is not for conversation. Mourning is for movement. At the canal, the sun has reached the water. It glints and dances across the surface, making your eyes squint. A heron stands nearby, unmoving. You kneel again, slower this time, easing the jars into the current. The water is cool. It always surprises you, that chill in your fingers. When the light is so bright, you lift the jars again, your shoulders used to the pressure now. It is not the weight that tires you. It is the silence that builds around it. There was a time, long ago, when you carried the water for your family, when little hands helped with smaller pots, when your husband laughed at your stride, calling you camelback. Those voices are gone now, and so you carry 4 others, quietly, steadily, without asking. The walk back is uphill, a soft slope, hardly noticeable unless you've walked it with clay across your spine 1,000 times. You reach the square just as the first midday. Shadows begin to stretch. Someone has left a date cake on the step beside the oven. A thank you, perhaps, or maybe an offering. You eat it slowly, letting the sugar soften your breath. The empty jars sit beside you. You wipe their rims clean with your shawl, even though no one will notice. The potter nods to you as he passes. He says nothing. You nod back. These are the greetings of the ones who rise early, who carry, who labor without sound. And you wonder, when the village forgets the names of the ones who brought the day to life, will the clay jars tell the story for you? The day fades slowly, the way it always does in the heat. The shadows stretch longer across the walls. The children's voices grow fainter as they are called indoors. Fires are banked low now, just warm enough to finish cooking. The air begins to soften, and the village breathes again after the long stillness of noon. Your work is mostly done. The last jar rests beside a widow's door, smaller than the others, its neck wrapped in linen to keep it from cracking. You've poured it out with care, not spilling a drop, and left it quietly in the shade, just as she likes. You didn't knock, you never do, but she always knows you were there. You sit by the low wall near your home now, fingers coated with fine dust, your legs stretched out. The jars are empty, leaned carefully against the stone. You'll wash them tomorrow, or the next day. You've made 4 trips today, maybe 5. You don't count them anymore. Once you used to walk quickly, light on your feet, daring the water. To slosh. You remember laughing once, years ago, when a goat startled you and you lost an entire jar into the dust. The splash, the mess, the sting of waste. Now, you walk slower, smarter, not out of fear, but respect for the water, for the weight, for the silence it demands. You lean your head back and look at the sky. The stars are returning, one by one, faint pinpricks behind the fading blue. You think of the canal, how it looks now, in twilight. Flat and silver like polished stone. You wonder how many more times you'll walk that path before your knees ask you to stop. The reed mats nearby are being rolled up for sleep. A young girl passes with a small pot balanced on her hip. The way you once taught her. She nods to you. Nothing is said, but you know. She remembers. Someone always does, even if only for a moment. You pick up one jar and hold it in your lap. It's smooth and familiar, marked with years of use. A chip on the rim, a dent in the side. You run your hand over it slowly, like you might over the back of an old friend. You tip it gently. A single drop clings to the curve of the bottom and glides down. You catch it with your finger dot. Cool, clean. You smile, just a little. Not from joy, not from pride, just from knowing that this, too, was enough. And as the night settles in around you, and the stars take their places above the roofs of the quiet village, you ask yourself, if the last drop is never seen, was the journey still worth the wait? You wake to the sound of wind brushing over dry earth. The fields are quiet, not empty, just waiting. The last flood was months ago, and the silt it left behind has long since hardened into a cracked, dusty crust. You stand at the edge of the land you know by heart, a long wooden staff in your hand, its tip worn smooth from years of measuring. The soil speaks without words. You listen carefully. There are no leaves yet, no sprouts, just the faint, brittle memory of past harvests. You step forward, slowly, your sandals kicking up soft plumes of dust. You drag the stick through the ground with each step, marking invisible lines, not for anyone else to see, but for you. You know where each row should fall, where the barley once grew thick, where the melons failed last year. This is how a farmer reads time, not by clocks, not by stars, but by the shape of the dirt beneath his feet. The wind picks up slightly, stirring dry reeds along the field's edge. A bird cries out overhead, then falls silent. You kneel and press your palm to the earth, warm to warm. The rains are late this year. You can feel it in your bones. The others talk of omens, of temple signs, of prayers unanswered. You just wait. You rise and begin clearing debris from the old canal. bent sticks, fallen stalks, clumps of dried grass. Each handful is tossed aside without hurry. This trench will carry the floodwater again, if the gods allow it. If not, there will be dust. You pause to drink from your skin, wiping your mouth with the edge of your sleeve. The water is already warm. The sun hasn't even reached its peak. From a distance, your fields look like nothing at all, dry, uneven, unremarkable. But you know better. You know every rut and rise. You know which corner holds moisture longer. You know where the ants always build their hills. You know the place where your father once knelt, planting the last seeds of his final harvest. You pass that spot now and press your hand to the ground there, just for a moment. The earth is no softer, no different, but it remembers. You stand again, staff in hand, and resume your path. The breeze carries the scent of dust, of old roots, of time stretching out across the floodplain, and you wonder, when the rain finally comes, washing your lines away, will the land still remember the hands that waited? The sun sits high now, casting hard shadows across the field. Your sandals are coated in dust. The hem of your tunic is stiff with dried silt from last season's flood, a faded grey line where water once touched. You glance toward the canal ditch again, now mostly cleared. Its dry bed snakes through your land, twisting gently like an old scar. You traced that path yourself, years ago, using only a wooden marker, a string, and the wind. You never expected it to stay. Nothing in farming stays. You walk the length of your field again, counting paces, not out loud, just inside your head. 62 across, 104 along the far side. You tap the ground every few steps with your measuring stick, making small marks, adjusting slightly with each pass. There's no map here, just memory, ritual, and rhythm. A boy passes on the far road, balancing a load of thatch. He waves. You raise your hand in return, but say nothing. There's little to say during this part of the season. The work is quiet, the future uncertain. In the shade of an acacia tree, you rest. Your back presses against the trunk as you drink again. The breeze has faded. The dust now hangs still in the air. Far off, temple bells echo faintly. Maybe a funeral, maybe an offering. You've heard both on days like this. You reach into your satchel and pull out a pouch of seeds, old ones, saved from the last good harvest. You run them through your fingers, barley, lentil, flax. Each one is dry and hard and unpromising. But you know better. You've seen what the Nile can do when it chooses to be kind. You've also seen what happens when it forgets. You let the seeds fall slowly back into the pouch and tie it shut. Not yet. You stand again. Brush your palms clean and walk to the southern edge of the land. That corner always drains slowly. The mud there lingers long into the planting season. You carve a new line through it now with your stick, adjusting for what may come. Will the flood remember this shape? Probably not. You think of all the farmers who walked this same field before you. Fathers, sons, neighbors, all of them drawing lines into soil that never holds them. The field has changed, just a little, every season. But still, the work continues. You press one more mark into the earth and step back, and you wonder if your rows are never seen. Will the harvest still carry your name? Evening falls in layers. First the heat lifts, not quickly, but slowly, like a thick blanket peeled back. Then the color fades from the sky. The edges of your field blur. What was dry and brown now looks blue and soft. Birds return to the reeds near the canal. A few insects chirp in the stillness. You sit near your small hut, staff across your knees, watching. The dust clings to everything, your sandals, your tunic, the creases in your hands, but you do not wipe it away. Dust means the work was done. Dust means the ground was walked, and you have walked it. Tomorrow, you'll do it again, and the next day, and the one after that. You will redraw the same lines again and again, measuring a field that may never receive rain, planting rows that may never hold roots, and still you will mark, pace, rake, and wait, because farming is not only planting, it is hoping, quietly, stubbornly. You remember a story your grandfather once told, about a season when the river did not rise, when the cattle died, when families ate locusts and dried reeds. And still, he said, they measured the field, because when the rains finally came months later, it mattered that someone had prepared. Even in famine, they drew lines. You lean your head back and look at the sky. The stars return. The smell of warm dust fades into the smell of cooling earth. A neighbor walks past, nods silently. He carries a bowl of dry grain. You both know it won't last long, but you also know it must be saved for planting, not eating. The lines in your field are already softening. A breeze smooths them. A goat strays too close and kicks one into nothing. You don't stop it. You just watch, because you understand, the land remembers differently than you do. It does not hold your rows, your paces, your marks, but it remembers hands, weight, movement, intention. Somewhere beneath the topsoil, the land knows it was touched, and that is enough. You rise at last, brush your palms together, and step inside. The staff leans beside the doorway, ready for morning. You close your eyes as the night grows thick, and you wonder if your footsteps vanish with the wind. Will the harvest still be shaped by your silence? The mud is thick today. You feel it between your toes as you step into the pit, the mixture squelching softly with every movement. Clay, straw, water, dust. Nothing noble, nothing precious, but together it makes the walls of cities, temples, homes, tombs. You are a brickmaker, and this pit is your world. You bend forward, scoop the mixture with both hands, and lift it high. The straw folds into the clay like thread through cloth. You press it together again and again, pushing out air, breaking apart clumps. The sun is already high, beating down on your back. Sweat runs down your arms and vanishes into the mud below. The pit is no more than waist deep, dug into the edge of the floodplain near the village. You've worked it since you were old enough to carry a mold. Your father did the same, and his father, though no one speaks his name anymore. The river gifted this mud after the last flood. When the waters pulled back, the land was dark and wet and full of promise. This clay, left behind, is perfect, rich and smooth. Mixed with chopped straw and water, it binds well. You know its moods. Too dry and it crumbles. Too wet and it cracks in the mold. You kneel beside the stack of wooden frames, rectangular and worn, and press a handful of the mixture inside. Your fingers move quickly, shaping the corners, scraping the top flat with a reed. You lift the mold gently and tap it once, a soft knock to let the new brick slip out onto the drying row. Then again and again and again. Each brick the same size, the same shape, but never truly identical. You line them side by side under the sun, careful to leave space between them for the air to pass through. The breeze helps. If the day is too still, they'll crack unevenly. You can't rush this part. Drying takes time. You sit back for a moment and stretch your arms. Around you lie hundreds of bricks, some from yesterday, some from last week. Some still soft enough to carry the imprint of your heel when you forget to step wide. Each one holds the ghost of a handprint. Each one will be lifted, carried, stacked. None will bear your name. You don't expect them to. The buildings rise. The bricks disappear into the walls. And your labor is buried beneath whitewash, carved stone, or the shadows of priests. But still, nothing stands unless you begin it. And as you press another mold into the clay, sweat running into your eyes, and the hot wind sweeping across the floodplain, you wonder, if no one remembers the hands that shaped the first brick, will the wall still stand with the same strength? The sun sits heavy above the plain. You've stepped out of the pit now. Your hands are stained with clay, dry and cracking at the knuckles. Beneath your fingernails, earth. In the creases of your elbows, straw. You wipe your brow with the back of your wrist, but the sweat returns almost instantly. This is the waiting part. Rows upon rows of bricks lie before you, lined carefully in the sun. Some are already firm, others still shine with moisture. You don't touch them, not yet. You know the signs: a hairline crack, a soft edge, a sag in the middle. Any of these means ruin later. Best to wait. The wind shifts. Dust rises in gentle swirls between the bricks. You crouch to examine the day's work. A small lizard scurries across a still soft row, leaving a line of prints across one surface. You don't chase it. You just smooth the mark gently with your palm. A perfect brick must cure without disturbance. Once a dog ran through a whole batch. 2 days of labor, lost to paw prints and cracks. You don't leave the bricks unattended now. In the distance, you hear shouts. A work crew from the estate is repairing a granary wall. You sent 30 bricks there last month. You never saw them again. That's how it goes. Your bricks travel farther than you do. You sit on a flat stone near the edge of the drying field and eat a piece of dried fig. It sticks to your teeth, but it's sweet, and it fills the quiet. You drink from a gourd. The water is warm, but it settles your stomach nearby. 2 boys begin carrying the dried bricks, the ones shaped last week, stacking them neatly under the canopy. You watch them with a quiet eye. One tilts a brick. Too far, it chips. He looks at you and winces. You nod once. That's enough. A broken brick is a reminder, not a punishment. The wind carries the smell of damp earth, sweat and straw. You close your eyes for a moment and listen to the rustle of reed mats, to the rhythmic thud of bricks being stacked, to the shifting air across the land. The bricks don't make noise on their own, but together, as they dry, settle, change, they fill the space with a kind of breath. You remember, faintly, the first brick you ever shaped. It cracked before it dried. You were impatient. You touched it too soon. Your father said nothing. He simply made another. That was the lesson. Not in words, in repetition. You stand and stretch again. The bricks are still drying. You will not rush them. Tomorrow or the next day, they'll be ready to move. You'll know when you see the color shift, when the edges grow hard beneath your thumb, when the sun has done its work, and you wonder, when the wall stands tall, far from this pit, will anyone remember the days it spent lying still under the sky? The bricks are ready now. You test one with your knuckle firm, no give. You lift another by its edge and turn it in your hand. It's light, but solid. The color has changed, no longer dark with water, but pale and chalky, baked by wind and time. You smile, barely. It is a good batch. The boys begin loading them onto a sled pulled by 2 oxen. One stack, then another. You guide them, not with shouts, just small corrections. Stack tighter, flat side down. Don't rush. Bricks that break in transport are lost forever. It's better to carry fewer and arrive whole. You watch as the load sways forward, down the packed road toward the village. Somewhere, someone has ordered these bricks. For a wall, a kill, maybe even a temple shed. You don't ask where they go. You just shape them. You return to the drying field. Only a few bricks remain, the ones that cracked or dried too fast, or carry small faults. You will not sell those, but you do not throw them away. Some will be ground and mixed back into fresh mud. Others might patch a low wall. Even the broken ones have a use. You sit beside the empty pit and run your fingers through the soft mud again. There is always more. The flood comes. The clay remains. The straw grows. The work continues. You've seen bricks carried off to build tombs for men with gold rings and painted eyes. And you've seen them crumble to dust beneath the feet of children before the wall was even finished. All built from the same pit. You take the last dried brick in your hand, one you formed 2 days ago, pressed into a mold with sore fingers and a quiet breath. You hold it up to the sun. It has no mark, no name, no story carved into it. It will never be remembered for itself, and yet it will hold weight. It will hold silence. It will hold history. It will hold roofs and doors and people asleep beneath them, and maybe one day it will fall, crumble, return to the ground, and someone else will scoop it up, not knowing who shaped it, or how many days it waited to dry. You set it down gently, and as the dust lifts around your feet, and the sound of the returning oxen grows faint in the distance, you wonder if the wall forgets the name of the one who laid its first brick. Did the brick ever forget the warmth of your hands? Before the sun rises, you are already seated. The mat beneath you is worn smooth where your legs fold. The loom stands tall in front of you, wooden and quiet, its beams faintly splintered with age. You run your fingers gently across the hanging threads. They are cool with dew, stretched overnight and waiting. You do not count days. You count threads, each one passed through the heddle, each one measured by fingertip, cut with a chipped flint blade, knotted at the edge with practiced quiet. This is how your time moves, not with the priest's calendar, not with the moon, but with cloth slowly forming beneath your hands. The village is still asleep. Only the birds know you're awake. You hear the first soft chirps from the fig tree beyond the wall. The sky is still dark, but the color is beginning to shift. That faint gray that means the river is starting to steam, and the fishermen are turning in their beds. You sit straighter and begin. The shuttle glides across the loom. You catch it in your right hand, then send it back through in the other direction. One row, then another. The weft wraps around the warp, crossing over and under, slowly building a tight, steady fabric. You've done this since you were small, sitting behind your mother, learning how to braid the fringe, how to smooth the lines, how to pull the fibers tight but not tear them. She used to hum while she worked. You do not hum. You listen to the rustle of the loom, to the breath of the cloth, to the silence between the stitches. This cloth is for the scribe's wife, fine linen, thin and even. She asked for white, no dyes, no decoration, It will wrap her shoulders at festival time. She will never think of you when she wears it. That's not the point. You pause to wet your fingers, twisting a loose thread into place. The morning wind brushes your cheek. A pot clinks in the distance. Someone else is waking. But you stay here, bent over your work, eyes steady. The thread must not break. The tension must remain even. You can feel, not just see, when the cloth is true. One more row, one more pass. Of the shuttle, you stop only when the sun clears the top of the eastern wall, casting light across your mat. You lean back, stretch your shoulders, and look at what you've woven. Only a hand's length more than yesterday. But in that stretch, 100 decisions, 100 silent adjustments, 100 movements that no one saw but you. And you wonder if the garment forgets the hands that shaped it. Will it still carry the weight of your care? The sun is higher now. Its light cuts long lines across the loom, warm and slanted. You shift your seat slightly to stay in the shadow. The linen thread reflects the glow, not brightly, but with a soft, dull shine. The kind that speaks of clean work, of tight tension, of days spent bent in silence. You resume. The shuttle glides back and forth, back and forth. The rhythm is the same as always, and yet no 2 days are identical. The fiber feels a little rougher. This morning, a knot in the warp tugs too tightly. The thread near the left edge keeps slipping. These things you notice, not with your eyes, but with your fingers. It's a dance between material and memory. You don't look at the pattern. Anymore, you don't need to. Your body remembers where each pass should land, where to pull, when to pause, where not to force. Mistakes are not shouted in this kind of work. They whisper, hiding deep in the fabric, visible only to those who care to see. You care, but you know most won't. The woman who wears this will feel its softness. She admire its weight or how it folds. But she won't feel the 100 times you rethreaded a line, or how you adjusted for a warp that shrank, or how the wind once knocked the loom slightly and you spent an hour realigning the frame. None of that is in the cloth, and yet all of it is outside. The village has woken fully. The smell of hot grain drifts from a neighbor's hearth. A goat cries. Children run past your wall, laughing, kicking dust. You hear the creak of the potter's cart and the distant rhythm of a hammer from the temple yard. But you stay with the loom. You smooth a wrinkle with the heel of your hand and keep going. The work doesn't speed up just because the sun has risen. It continues as it always has. One thread at a time. You've learned not to hurry. Rushing ruins the tension. And once a floor begins, it runs all the way to the end. You pause and stretch your back. Your eyes scan the cloth so far, even tight, clean. The edge lines up neatly. You let yourself feel a small kind of peace. Not pride, not joy. Just the quiet certainty that your hands did what they've always known how to do. And you wonder if no one sees the mistakes you caught. Does the cloth still carry the patience it cost? The day cools slowly. Shadows stretch long across the courtyard. You fold the finished linen carefully, smoothing the fabric with deliberate fingers. The cloth is light and soft now, ready for the scribes. Wife to wrap around her shoulders, though she will never know how many mornings you spend shaping each thread. You sit back on your heels, watching the sun lower itself behind the distant palms. Your hands are marked with fine cuts from the fibers and small splinters from the looms. Frame, you flex your fingers, loosening the ache. The cloth waits quietly now, folded and silent. Someone will carry it away tomorrow, perhaps wrapped in cloth of another color, trimmed with beads or dyed with indigo. They will praise its beauty or its simplicity, but they will not feel the 1,000 tiny decisions you made, the tension you held steady, the threads you replaced, the way you coaxed the fibers to lie flat. You wonder if the cloth remembers, not the shape or the color, not the folds or the weight, but the hands that held it. You close your eyes and imagine the years ahead. The cloth may fade, tear, be patched and rewoven. It may be passed down, lost, forgotten. But for now, it carries a quiet kind of history, invisible to most, but real to you. You pick up a small scrap left over from another project. It's rough and uneven, but soft in your hands. You hold it to your cheek, feeling the threads, gentle warmth. And as the evening deepens, you ask yourself, if the fabric forgets the hands that wove it, will the story still be held in its folds? And so, we've come to the end of why you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt. Through the heat, the hush, the dust of forgotten streets, we walked gently in the footsteps of scribes and servants, under a sun that never seemed to set, past temples, riverbanks, and quiet lives long buried in sand. Thank you for being here tonight, for allowing this story to settle softly around you, for simply listening, wherever you are now. May your night be just as still as theirs once was. If the rhythm of these stories brought you peace, you're always welcome to return or subscribe if that feels right for you. But no rush, no pressure, just rest. Let everything fade like ink on ancient papyrus, like moonlight slipping behind a cloud, like the last flicker of a candle in the dark. Sleep well and good night.